All right. Well, it is the top of the hour. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to LESA speaker series that is featuring Deke Sharon. He'll be talking on life lessons from vocal harmony. Um, just a couple logistic things before I hand it over to Dustin, who will introduce Deke. We will have a Q&A. There is a Q&A feature here in the WebEx, so please, as Deke's speaking, if you want to populate your questions in there, we will do some Q&A after his talk. We do have the chat open, so if you experience any technical issues and need assistance with something, I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, and we'll take care of that for everyone. And then just also wanted to let you know that this talk is being recorded, so there will be a replay available. And lastly, just to maximize your viewing experience, if you go up and hover in the presentation window, you can switch the layout to side by side so that you can see both the slides and Deke as clearly as possible. So without further ado, thank you for being here. I do want to introduce Dustin Riggs. He is our Chief Protocol Officer who will share a little bit about Deke and introduce him. Dustin.
Great, thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. Wow, OM Aka-G, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all here. It's a pleasure to be participating in the LESA Speaker Series today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dustin Riggs. I am the Chief of Protocol and Special Events for the entire laboratory, and I am a huge musical theater tap dancing geek, and it's a true honor and pleasure to be here today to introduce our guest speaker to you. The Aka gods have looked down on us, and they've given us a first chance today to have Mr. Deke Sharon here, an acapella extraordinaire with us today. You know, he's an American singer, arranger, composer, producer, a teacher of acapella music, and he's a leader and promoter of the contemporary acapella community. And he's also been hailed by Entertainment Weekly as the father of contemporary acapella. So you're not in for a disappointment over the next hour. And Deke is a San Francisco native. He's been singing in choirs since the age of 5, and he's a participant of the San Francisco Boys Choir. So he's definitely familiar with the Bay Area. He's credited as being responsible for the modern sound of acapella and popularizing it in the mainstream today. So, you know, what used to be seen as dorky is now respected because of him. He's the arranger and on-site music director and vocal producer for all 3 Universal hit films, the Pitch Perfect franchise. He's produced 5 seasons of The Sing-Off for NBC, and he's also quoted as saying, be careful, Deke, I've stalked you a little bit, that everyone can sing, that very few people are tone deaf. So, you know, people can sing in the shower, they can sing in the car, they can sing during a pandemic when you're bored, or when you're drunk at karaoke. He says the voice is a powerful instrument, and the act of music is inside all of us. He describes his life work is to get more people to sing, because music can build a better community. And his motto is harmony through harmony. So when he's not hanging on the set of Pitch Perfect with Rebel Wilson, he's here at LLNL as part of the LESA Speaker Series. So please, everyone, join me in a round of virtual roaring applause, and let's talk cappella today with Mr. Deke Sharon. Welcome.
Hilarious. I appreciate that. Thank you, Dustin, for all of the Aka puns, all of the hilarity and ridiculousness, and Colin and everyone who's a part of this LESA Speaker Series for having me here. Before I dive in, though, Stacy, I saw you comment briefly about the fact that he hasn't heard me sing. Okay, allow me to get on a soapbox for a second. Let's assume you had rarely, if ever, picked up a basketball. How many free throws would you hit? Right? The human voice and our vocal cords are really muscles like any other muscle in our body, and matching pitch is something that just takes experience. Now, you may say, well, but I'm clearly tone deaf, like I can't sing like these other people. Fact of the matter is there are only a few people on this planet who are actually tone deaf, and these people talk like this and they have kind of a monotone because like their voices don't move up, or at the end of a question like, really? Like if you go, really? You're not tone deaf because you're using pitch as part of your communication and speech, right? So anytime someone says to me like, I'm tone deaf. I say, no, you're not, because the fact of the matter is you're using pitch all of the time as part of speech. You're just not used to specifically matching pitch. And through human history, everyone sang until recorded music came along. And then since we were surrounded by music, music education slipped down as a level of importance in schools. Back in Pythagoras' time, like he considered music to be one of the 5 essential topics. And if you read classic novels, people retire all the time to the salon and they make music after meals. And if you wanted music, you had to make music yourself. And this goes all the way from work songs and field hollers and sea shanties, which are popular now on TikTok again, all the way up to the erudite upper echelons of society. Music, and specifically vocal music, has been a part of human culture from prehistoric times, and everyone sang. It's only now that people really think they can't sing. If you can speak, you can sing. Anyway, hi everybody, I'm Deke Sharon, and let's spend a little bit of time talking about vocal harmony. I call this talk Life Lessons from Vocal Harmony because so many lessons in my life have come through and from the experience of singing. And so I want to share some of those with you, just tell you a little about my own experiences, and also talk a little bit about the value that having some kind of vocal harmony singing can have in your life and in the life of your loved ones. So yes, parents, let your kid join choir. It's just as valuable, if not more valuable, than many of the other activities that he or she or they may be doing. All right, so let's just dive into this whole thing. And I want to let you know, like throughout this entire talk, feel free to post things in the chat. Feel free to save up some ideas for questions and answers at the end, because I definitely want to get to those. And I am an open book. All right, let's move to the first slide. So why vocal harmony? What's the fundamental thing that makes vocal harmony more valuable or compelling to people? The fact of the matter is that we as individuals are capable of certain things, but when we team up with others, we are capable of much more. And music is one of the main ways in which people communicate and put themselves out into the world. And if you look throughout the animal kingdom, birds and crickets and whales, so many different creatures communicate through sound and through pitch. And that's what we do as well as humans. And almost certainly before there was specific language, humans sang as well. We used our voices, utterances, and tones and whatever to communicate to other members of our tribe, others around us, be it fight or flight and love and connection. So vocal harmony is really using all of these sounds and these tones to connect with others and to create sounds that are harmonious, to go back to that specific word. And like I said, throughout human history, vocal harmony and acapella has been at the core of pretty much every culture around the world, if you dig back deep enough and far enough. And so there's something fundamental to the experience of raising your voice with others. And this is why it's at the center of so many religious ceremonies as well. Like you find yourself, if you're let's talk about the holidays. When you get to the holidays and you're listening to Christmas carols, to holiday songs, there's something really powerful about the spirituality and the connection and those warm, fuzzy feelings that we get. And that's why everybody flocks to hearing vocal harmony around the holidays. There's something ineffable about that. And so I want to tap into what that is and why that is, and talk a little bit about the overall history of the traditions of vocal harmony. And this also gets a little bit into my own life as well. So if you're looking at the big, broad pictures of what's gone in from prehistoric times, of course, it's before written history, so we don't specifically know, let alone music notation. So we don't specifically know what happened back then, but we do know that people made sound. And like I said, throughout the animal kingdom, we can see how other creatures use their voices together. And you can hear recordings of whale songs, which are fascinating and amazing. And in fact, there are people who study what those tones mean and what the different messages are. And of course, there are bird songs and different kinds of calls and sounds that are made by different species. And it's fascinating to look into the different sounds they're making during different parts of their life cycle and also different circumstances that they're in and what those different tones mean. So we know that as creatures ourselves, as animals ourselves, we raise our voices to say different things. And like I said, through early civilizations all around the world, there are different traditions of vocal music and vocal harmony. And it's great to go and you can look at like the early Aboriginal music of Taiwan or in different African cultures. And here with Native Americans in North America, across Europe, there are great sounds and styles of vocal harmony that exist before there was any notated music. Then when you start getting into the Middle Ages, I don't know if you realize this, but our 5-line staff was created for a cappella, right? The music notation that we use for all of our instruments and everything like that was literally designed to notate Gregorian chant by Guido d'Arezzo in the year 1000. I still remember that from my University High School Western Civilization course. And then when you get into the Renaissance, a lot of that madrigal singing that you hear when you go to the Renaissance Fair, for instance, that was the popular a cappella of its time. And there were, of course, sacred pieces, but there were also a lot of secular pieces. And those songs were very racy for their time. A lot of people dying in each other's arms and fountains spurting and all this imagery that was cutting edge at the time, shall we say. It was beyond PG-13. As you get into the classical era and you start hearing the great choral works, in fact, Beethoven's Ninth, of course, like he was building. There was nowhere else to go. Where could he go? And how could he most effectively present the sound and experience of joy to the audience? Of course, he had to turn to vocal harmony to do that. And the fourth movement of Beethoven's Ninth, the big ode to joy, wouldn't be the same if it weren't for vocal harmony. And there's great 20th century and contemporary classical music as well that relies entirely on the human voice. But more powerfully and more specifically, when we're talking about the expression and the experience of a cappella, we're really talking about popular a cappella. And so classical music, of course, and classical traditions continue, but let's start with barbershop music. 120 years ago or so, back in the late 1890s, when people got together in their social circles, and the barbershop was a place where a lot of people would congregate, and one person would start singing the melody, and others would kind of connect themselves to that melody and sing harmonies above and below it. And we now call that style of music barbershop, that great 4-part quartet singing. And the barbershop quartets now, if you don't know about modern barbershop, it's fantastic. But it really started out as an oral tradition, a lot of call and response, a lot of simple chords and harmonies. And in my own experience, I came upon barbershop music singing in musical theater in high school. In fact, my freshman year, I was really excited because the director was trying to choose between 2 musicals. And if he chose South Pacific, I was going to have one of the leads, but he ended up going with The Music Man, and he cast me as the lead in the barbershop quartet. And I thought, oh, I could have had a lead in this musical. And yet, by being lead in the barbershop quartet, it changed my life, because I got to become close friends with these other 3 people and learn how to use our voices together in harmony. The best analogy I can use is it's like the Blue Angels flying in perfect consort, right? When you're singing barbershop, you're all singing the same words at the same time. So you've got to align your vowels, you've got to align your overall expression, and then that connection that you have between the other people, and trying to take all 4 of your voices and really ring and sing these chords as one voice is an incredibly powerful experience. And there are few other times in life when you are doing something that's in such incredible lockstep. It's almost like if you're rowing crew and all of your oars have to move together in the same way. And yet, when you're raising your voices together, you're creating something that's powerful and spiritual. And then I moved in college. I moved and started singing in vocal jazz in the New England Conservatory of Music. But it was the collegiate a cappella world that really captured my heart. And I don't know how many of you have seen the Pitch Perfect movies, but the character of Benji, played by Ben Platt, who many people know from Dear Evan Hansen, his character was actually based on my life. So I have to digress a little bit here and tell you a little bit of my own story. But the fact of the matter was, I was a huge fan of acapella, and I collected all these albums from around the world, and definitely around America, Singers Unlimited and the Bobs and the Nylons and Take Six. And I just lived rockapella. I loved all of this vocal harmony. And I fell in love with the college a cappella sound as well. A group from Tufts University came to my high school here in San Francisco, University High School, and they sang, and I was like, that's what I want to do. This is the most amazing thing in the world. So by the time I went back and auditioned for this group, I thought of these guys as rock stars. So I walked into the audition, and I was, oh, Haley Finetti, I know your uncle. That's fantastic. Yes, of course. The Bobs were one of the biggest inspirations in my life. Anyway, when I walked into this audition, I thought all of these other people were unbelievable musicians. So I like showed off all of what I could do, and I went in and I was like, here's my high note, here's my low note, and I just assumed everyone was a rock star musician. And they weren't. They were like pre-med and pre-law and whatever. And so bottom line, they didn't take me because they called me overzealous. They thought I was just like too into this whole thing. And I was really into it. So then next time around, next semester, I convinced my roommate, who was also in the double degree program with the New England Conservatory of Music. I said, like, let's audition. And long story short, he got in and I didn't. And he didn't even want to do it. He was like, well, it'd be fun if we did it together, but now I'm in this group. And that's where the story from Pitch Perfect is taken. In fact, Pitch Perfect was and is, where do I have it here? It's actually a book about college a cappella. So it's a nonfiction book. And there's a chapter about all of these shenanigans in there about my life. And anyway, so I was heartbroken because this is all I want to do in college. It's part of the reason I chose Tufts University, and I loved this group, the Beelzebubs. And so the third time around, if you don't get in after 3 times, they're like, don't even audition anymore. So I realized, what am I going to do? And I said, I know, I'm going to act like I don't care. So I walked into the auditions, and they were like, okay, Deke, nice to see you back again. So what song are you going to sing? And I said, I don't know. And they're like, you didn't prepare a solo? I was like, nah, whatever. Like, just pick a song, tell me what to sing, and I'll sing that. And the whole time I went through the audition, and I acted like I didn't care at all. And they took me. And then I became music director and and changed music history with a cappella. So I guess the lesson I took away from that was one of extreme persistence. If there's something that you want, keep going for it no matter what. And these people in my college a cappella group became my closest friends. And this is another thing that's really fascinating about singing in a choir, be it a high school ensemble, middle school, collegiate a cappella ensemble, or something that you're doing either professionally or recreationally afterwards. And that is, I don't think there's any better melting pot for the human experience than a singing ensemble. And the fact of the matter is, the guys who were in this group, like this person was in a fraternity, this person's a jock, this one's chemistry, this one's law. Like, I wouldn't have hung out with them. I was like a musical theater / music nerd who was in the artsy crew and living in the arts house. And I wouldn't have spent time with all these different people. And yet it was the diversity of this ensemble that made it so strong. We needed high voices, we needed low voices, we needed rock singers, and we needed like people with really clear bell tones, and we needed gospel, and we needed all of these things all put together. Yes, Linda, music does bring people together. And more importantly, music teaches people the necessity of diversity. It's a word that's bandied about all the time. But the fact of the matter is, the value of being around people who are different from yourself and having their skills, learning from those skills, and everybody relying on their own strengths, but having the other people, by relying on their own strengths, carrying and moving everything forward and creating something bigger than the individual parts. That's more present in an a cappella and a vocal harmony ensemble than anywhere else. And it is one of the most important things I've ever learned in my entire life. And one of the greatest lessons that we have in vocal harmony. All right, moving on here to our next slide. Boom. Persistence. So I told you the story about Ben and Skylar, and it was funny when making Pitch Perfect, Ben came up to me and he was like, wait a minute, so I'm you? And I was like, dude, I don't do magic tricks, and I didn't have any Star Wars posters on my wall. I'm just not that guy. Of course, when Kay Conway was writing the screenplay for Pitch Perfect, she was, emphasizing everything and turning up the heat. But this persistence actually plays out in my life in a number of different ways. When I graduated college, while I was in college, first of all, I decided that I really wanted to be able to do the kind of music that you couldn't do a cappella. So everybody was singing Don't Worry, Be Happy, and For the Longest Time, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, all these very vocal harmony prevalent songs, right? So there were songs on the radio that you could do that were a cappella already, or mostly a cappella. But then there were all these other tunes that were blasting from college radio and from people's dorm rooms. And Led Zeppelin and Peter Gabriel and Pink Floyd and U2 and Duran Duran and the kind of music that just didn't lend itself to vocal harmony. That's the music I wanted to do. So it was actually the song In Your Eyes that I brought back to my dorm room in CD form and tried to arrange it for my group, and I couldn't do it. And we were 4-part, tenor, tenor, bass, bass, TTBB. And I ended up arranging an 11-part arrangement with 5 different vocal percussion parts and I came up with the term vocal percussion. I was like, I don't know what to describe, but I need you to go like a shaker, and I need you to be like a talking drum, like an African talking drum, doom, 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 and then a hi-hat, and then you, okay, don't just sing ooh, I want you to actually change the shape of your vowels. Like I want you to go like a synthesizer, and I handed out all these parts, and the guys were like, dude, what are you doing? This is crazy. And I was like, no, please, let's just try it. And so we brought that weekend to college up in Maine, and we sang In Your Eyes. And by the end of the performance, there was just silence in the audience, like for too long. And then and everybody was screaming and jumped up on their feet, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And I was like, whoa, I feel like I have lightning in a bottle. So my whole senior year, I started to experiment with vocal percussion and instrumental sounds and this whole new style and way of doing a cappella. And so when it was time to graduate, the alums from our college a cappella group brought the seniors out to dinner, and they were like, okay, what are you going to be doing, Bert? And Bert was like, I'm going to be going into law school. Ah, fantastic. And what will you be doing, Rob? Well, I think I'm going to go into business and marketing. And Dave, what are you going to do? I think maybe pre-med. And they're all like, excellent. And they're like, Deke, what are you going to be doing? And I said, okay, I'm going to create an a cappella society, right? And we're going to have like festivals, and I'm going to do a publishing company, and we'll have like people get together, and I'm going to create a whole competition around this whole a cappella thing, and we'll have like a whole new thing. And they were like, that's fine, son, but what will you be doing for money? And I was like, no, it's going to be great. It's going to be really big. Everyone like either laughed in my face or laughed behind my back. And in fact, my high school choral director, this is totally true, and I'll admit it, the person you think would be most supportive of you going into a career in vocal music, he said, it's like Deke's trying to create a career professional tiddlywinks. Like, I was a punchline to many people for many years, and yet I just loved this thing so much, and I knew like if people knew about it, they would love it. And it took many years, it took decades of slowly building a community and events and materials and a nonprofit and helping groups get started and all this kind of stuff for a cappella to build and grow and grow and grow. And then, of course, we became an overnight success with the sing-off and Pitch Perfect and whatnot. But the persistence of having to work hard to get into this a cappella group prepared me for the persistence that it would take afterwards. And I just loved a cappella so much, and I wanted to share this thing with other people. Another story is when I was hired to work on the sing-off. So NBC was going to make this television show about a cappella, and I was like the last person hired. They decided that the person who was going to be in charge of the music, who was down in Los Angeles, decided that she needed, maybe an assistant or somebody to work with her. And so they brought me in, and it was very clear to me right out of the gate that nobody really understood a cappella. So she was like a savant. She was like super talented and would overdub her own voice and stuff, but she hadn't worked with other people. And she actually turned to me when we first met. She said, so like when you do an arrangement, do you like write down the notes? And I was like, oh no. And when I talked to the showrunner, the first time I mentioned to him, I was like, okay, I got the groups already and whatnot. And I said, but I'm looking at the schedule and I don't see sound checks for any of the groups anywhere. So when are the groups going to do their sound check? And he turned to me and he said, sit down, shut up, and know your place. There aren't any sound checks. That's not how this thing's getting run. And I'll ask you if I have anything to say to you. And I realized, like, we're dead. This show is dead. You don't have sound checks, the whole show's going to fall apart. So I decided, like, I'm going to be like Gromit. You know, Wallace and Gromit, the dog that runs around? I'm going to be like that, and I'm just going to start fixing things. And they can fire me if they want to. So after the first episode of the show, one of the groups that was absolutely best of all, SoCals, who were singing a Queen song, they started singing and the audience roared, and all of a sudden they couldn't hear themselves and they got out of tune, and they ended up turning in one of the worst performances of the night. So we had the, like, gather together meeting in the morning of after that performance and after the taping of the first show. And the showrunner was, like, screaming at everyone, like, what the hell happened? That was one of my best groups, and the whole thing almost fell apart. Can anyone explain to me what went on there? And there were like 100 people in the room, and everyone's dead silent. And I raised my hand. He was like, Deke, what's the deal? And I said, the groups didn't get sound checks. He was like, sound checks, huh? All right. How long? And I was like, can they all have 45 minutes? And he was like, no, 20 minutes per group, and that's it. And it was like that. It was like a battle to get things that they needed to make this happen. But I knew this was our one shot. I knew this was our one chance to show the world what acapella had become. College acapella groups, barbershop groups, pop groups. Nota, who won the season 1, they were from Puerto Rico, and they were singing this wonderful, like, Latin meets jazz meets acapella. And it was an absolute delight to make this television show. But another level of persistence that was mentioned, or that really was impressed upon me, is you got to do the right thing, even if people are constantly pushing back against you. And the beautiful thing is it ended up bearing out well. A couple weeks into the whole run, I got a note. Literally, I wish I still had this note. It said, we see what you're doing and we appreciate it. Sony. And that was it. Like, it wasn't even signed by a person. It was just signed by Sony. And I was like, wow, this is nuts. And by the end of that first season, I went from, like, low man on the totem pole, and they made me a producer of the show. And one of the executive producers said, like, I got to go home for a little bit, but whatever Deke needs, that's my only message is whatever Deke needs, get it for him. And so I was eventually able to hire a staff and start moving the show in a direction where we had more people who were making sure everybody got sound checks. Anyway, the whole element of persistence, I think, is central to what has allowed my life to happen and allows Vocal Harmony to continue in a music industry that's really based on whatever the biggest thing can be. Those of us who are making Vocal Harmony are doing it because we love it, not necessarily because it's going to make us tons of money, but that's okay. So there are a number of different little lessons, life lessons, that I want to give you guys, and I'm going to keep an eye on the time so we have some time for talking afterwards and Q&A. But the first message that I want to make sure is clear is the concept of teamwork. We spend so much time in school, so much time in our work environments talking about the values of teams, but it's nowhere more present than when you're singing vocal harmony with others, how much you need other people, how essential it is for you all to be pulling in the same direction, your accountability to the overall group, and also how much you need to know how to follow as well as lead, right? They talk, there's a lot of talk about what makes a great leader and leadership and all this kind of stuff. There's something fundamental to singing it in a vocal harmony ensemble, which is you're not the most important thing almost always, right? And so even if there's somebody who has the lead vocal, most of the time they're going to be singing in the ensemble, right? So you learn how to follow well, which makes you a much better leader. And in fact, when I'm working with vocal harmony ensembles, I tell them all the time, try to break up the responsibilities. Make this person the business manager. This person's in charge of touring. This person's in charge of social media. This person's in charge of the music or whatever. And then what happens is when they have lead, they're much more understanding of and responsive to the overall experience of the rest of the group. And yet the followers are also better followers because they've been leaders. They know what it's like to be like picked at all the time and constantly questioned or whatever, and letting people kind of be in charge of their own realm and make that the focus of what they're doing ends up working better if people have all had moments where they lead and moments where they follow. And great teams come out of this this natural, organic experience of trying to create something all together, which is a good thing. There's a picture of Straight No Chaser, a fantastic a cappella group who, if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend it. They're very popular around the holidays because their first video, the 12 Days of Christmas, became one of the first ever viral YouTube videos. And they're great guys. I've had a lot of pleasure working with them. And they're a perfect example of an ensemble where one person will step forward and sing the solo, and then the rest of them back them up. And there's this natural flow, the synergy between stepping forward and pulling yourself back. And the end result is that the sum is definitely much bigger than the individual parts. All right, I talked a little bit about it beforehand. The power of diversity is something that's spoken about all the time, but it's not always explained. And what I mean by this is, I think it's very clear through the media. I think it's very clear in educational circles that people talk about diversity and the need for diversity and the need for respect for others. But it's rarely put in terms of why and how. And this becomes very clear when you're singing in a vocal harmony ensemble, as I mentioned before, your high voices, your low voices. In fact, looking here at this picture of the Bard and Bellas, who, by the way, caused me more grief than I've ever had in my entire life, the diversity in this group was their strength. And in fact, it was a lot of fun to paint with the different colors of their voices once we got them working. But I got to tell you a story from behind the scenes. Okay, so when we were casting the overall movie, so early on, Elizabeth Banks called me up and she said, "Hey, Deke, I bought the rights to this book, Pitch Perfect. There's a chapter about you in it. Everybody I talk to says, you're the guy. You want to make this a cappella movie?" And I was like, "Hi, Elizabeth Banks. Sure, let's make an a cappella movie." And so I was one of the first people brought on board. And we'd sit around the table and we'd talk about songs and moments and all this. And the director said, like, "Oh, I did a great job. I got you these fantastic people. And they're all great singers." So when I had my first music rehearsal with all of them, I set up the chairs in a circle and they came in one by one and they're all chatting. And I said, "Okay, time to start. So let me start by asking you a question. How many of you sang in an a cappella ensemble?" And if you look at this picture here on the far right, Kelly is kind of off to the far right with the black tank top on top. She came from the sing-off. She was in 2 seasons of the sing-off. In fact, she was in that group that got a little bit out of tune season 1, episode 1 of the sing-off because the monitors weren't there. I knew she was great and convinced directors and producers that we could bring one person from our world over there. But she was like Barden Bella number 10. Like, she's not on the posters. She's not in the materials, right? And the other 9, I was like, "How many of you sang in choir?" Because none of the rest of them had sung in a cappella. Like, "Okay, how many of you sang in choir?" And none of them raised their hands. And then one of them put her hand up and she said, like, "Does a semester in middle school count?" And the blood drained from my face because I need to create the greatest college a cappella group of all time. Out of 10 singers, only one of them's ever done a cappella before. They haven't even sung vocal harmony. Oh, dear. And we had a month of a cappella boot camp to put everything together, right? And AJ, the choreographer who'd worked with Usher and all these kind of people, he got everybody dancing really well, right? The Troublemakers, who were really built around 2 leads from Broadway, Skylar and Ben, Skylar Aston, who was the other male lead, and then Ben Platt from Dear Evan Hansen later on or whatever. Both of them were on Broadway, great singers. And the rest of the group were backfilled from local college a cappella groups because the Troublemakers weren't as important to cast, all these people, right? So we had the Troublemakers and the Bard and Bellas, and both of them could dance really well, right? And then when it was time for them to sing, give me mediocre college a cappella singers, I'll make them great. Like, that's perfect. I know what to do, right? And Ben and Skylar up front, they were fantastic. So the Troublemakers would sing and they were awesome. And then it was time for the Bard and Bellas. And yes, they all had nice voices. Yes, they all could sing lead. But in an a cappella ensemble, the point I was making before about, like, you're only singing lead at best in a 10-person group a 10th of the time, right? And the rest of the time they needed to blend. The voices needed to connect. And one would sing ooh, and one would sing ooh, and one would sing ooh, and like, the worst month of my life. So the Troublemakers would sing, and then the Bard and Bellas would sing, and it was just dreadful. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa. And the director pulled me aside and was like, Deke, I want to make sure you know that the women need to win the movie. And I was like, I know, I promise you. I've been working really hard, but you said that you got great singers, and he said you said you could work with anyone. And like, oh, it was just so aggravating. But somehow at the end, all the stars aligned and everything came together. And by the way, I'll let you know a little secret. When all of them are on screen together, and you know they put their hands in and they go, ah, there's like a chord, but the first time it's like real messy. That was them. That's actually them naturally. That's what came out of their voices without practicing anything. So yeah, but what happened was eventually, once I taught them to blend and connect their voices all together, then the power of their diversity really shone through. And Esther was able to like bring this gospel soul energy to the whole thing, right? And of course, Anna Kendrick had her like fun musical theater energy, and each one of the different members in Rebel, her like chaotic, like, you know, bull in a china shop personality. In fact, whenever recording Rebel, it was really fun because I'd say like, okay, Rebs, please, one time through, can you sing through the whole thing the way I wrote the music down, just the notes on the page, and then we can go crazy. And in fact, there's another story about her early on. She was actually singing with an American accent. So she was singing Turn the Beat Around, and I was like, okay, let's sing it again. And each time she sang it, it wasn't really funny. She was singing Turn the Beat Around. And I said, okay, can you try it louder? Can you try it funnier? Can you try it more comedic? And nothing was really clicking. And I said, okay, Rebel, sing it like it's 11:30 at night and it's karaoke and you've had like 7 glasses of sake. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she went, turn the beat around. And I was like, that's it. That's the movie. So I was like, but that's an Australian accent. So I ran like to the director right then. I was like, Jason, can Rebel be like Australian in this movie? And he was like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. And then I ran back. I was like, we can do it. So then everything from her after that was like, just try to get one reasonable take. And then everything was craziness, like literal craziness. And then we pulled together all the different pieces that we needed. But the great thing is, by the time we made the second movie and the third movie, each one of the Bard and Bellas began to realize like what they were good at and what their role was and when they should step forward and how they would all shine together as a group. And that's really one of the most powerful messages of the movie, which reflects one of the most powerful messages of Acapella, which is when you've got a sisterhood, when you've got a collective of individuals, each one shining in their own way makes the overall ensemble stronger. And then they're so happy and proud to support each other when possible. And in fact, it's actually Brittany, the redhead, who you see next to Kelly. All of them would call Kelly the professional. She because they would be like, can the professional sing my part for me? Because she was the one like a ringer who knew how everything worked within the overall ensemble. All right, moving on to the next screen here. Let's talk a little bit about my wonderful a cappella group now for Disney called Acapella. Specialization is an important thing in life as well. And in fact, there's been a lot of study about the nature of knowing what you're good at and focusing on it. So for an entire generation, if not longer, the idea was everybody should try to learn how to be good at everything. And of course, in school, we all need to take math and English and science and know a wide range of subjects. But more recently, it's been made very clear that the way to make a great organization work well is for people to do what they do well. And I know in the labs there at Livermore, like the whole point is you want your physicists to really be focusing on the thing they're best at so they can go deep in that particular realm. And if someone's not so good at scheduling, well, rather than worrying about like everybody has to be really good at scheduling, like get them the scheduling program they need, get them assistants, like have people focus on what they're really good at, and then the rest of the stuff they can build out from there. And the bottom line is, with an a cappella ensemble like Acapella, that's how it all works. We've got the super low bass. We've got the fantastic rhythmic vocal percussionist, right? We've got the screaming high tenor, and we've got our high ingenue soprano and like the cool know-it-all alto, the baritone with the gospel voice. Like each person is very different, and by leaning into their specific skills, this overall ensemble is that much stronger as a result of it. Alrighty, communication. The fact of the matter is, on this planet, particularly with so many people here, one of the most important skills anybody's going to learn is how to communicate. And the experience of singing, and particularly singing together with others, is one of the most heightened forms of communication. And the power of learning how to communicate with an audience and communicate with other singers is far and away one of the most important skills that all of us will have. It's been made very clear through a number of different books and studies and seminars and marriage counseling that listening is actually the most important element of communication. And you learn how to listen nowhere more powerfully and better than when you're in an ensemble, because you have to know what's going on around you. The whole concept of blend, making sure that your note is in the right place and that it fits within the chord the right way, that your vowel is aligning with the other vowels, that your rhythm is aligning with the others, that your dynamics, that you're not too loud, you're not too quiet, you're fitting right in the middle there. All of these things require a focus on hearing what the other people are doing. And if we spent more time in general listening, we would be much better at communicating. In fact, the best communication skill you can have is to let the other person go first. Get the information they have, combine it with the information you have, and you can move that conversation forward much more powerfully. And that's what vocal harmony is about. Find out what the other people are doing, fit yourself into that chord, tuck yourself into that harmony, and things are so much more powerful. And it's also important to know your audience, know who you're singing for and who you're connecting to. I mean, the experience of being on stage is a very powerful one, because people are, by definition, listening to you, but you want to know how to reach their voices and how to reach their hearts, really, with your voices. And Bob McFerrin's up on the screen. If any of you haven't seen his incredible work with improvisation, you can see some amazing YouTube videos now, of course. Nobody's on the road, nobody's performing live. But the whole idea behind Voicestra and with circle singing is that he'll just kind of improvise, and he'll come up with some kind of a pattern, and he'll hand it off, and another pattern, hand it off, and you'll see an entire song brought to life in front of you. And that's what's so great about Voicestra, and that's really what's great about human communication as well. When we're talking, we don't necessarily know where the conversation's going to go. There's a method to it all, and there's a process, but it's improvisatory, right? And a lot of great music, jazz and other styles of music, has an element of improvisation in it as well. And vocal harmony underscores this and celebrates it. So definitely go check out some Bob McFerrin with Voicestra online. There's some great videos out there as well. Self-Reliance. So I don't know if you know who this is by looking at this picture, but it's the Mills Brothers. And let me tell you, if you're having a bad COVID day, if you're frustrated, you go click on Mills Brothers videos and you will smile. They have so many fantastic songs, but these four brothers sang in perfect lockstep harmony, and you get a sense of the love they have with each other and the connection they have together when they're singing, but also how each one of them is a master at their own skill. Obviously, being in an organization, you all have heard of the concept of Dunning-Kruger, but if any of you haven't, the bottom line is that the people who are most confident about an activity or an action are both the people who are the very best in the world at it and the people who aren't good at all, right? People who are like second best in the world, your silver medalists, your bronze medalists, your people who are going to the Olympics but don't end up medaling, they actually undervalue their ability. People who are studying something and learning how to do it, they undervalue their talent and their knowledge and their experience, right? People who don't know much about anything are the ones who really overscore themselves and their competency and their knowledge about something. They just think they're able to do something much better than they are. And this is a problem in our culture and in our society that you see play out in politics, you see it play out in business and applications and whatever. Well, let me tell you a little story from behind the scenes in the sing-off. So anytime there's a reality show that's a competition on television, they end up having to hire a psychologist to be backstage. And I saw a guy sitting kind of in the backstage area, and I would run around with the headsets on and kind of run everything behind the scenes while we were doing a taping. And this guy would just sit there in the back, and he had his little iPad, and he was playing games on it. And one day I walked up to him during a commercial break, and I said, excuse me, sir, I see you here every day. I have to ask, who are you? Like, why are you here backstage and everything? He said, like, oh, I'm the official like psychiatrist hired by NBC to be here for the tapings. And I said, well, well, why are you here and what are you doing? He said, well, I got to tell you, I'm here to make sure that when a contestant loses, that they're okay psychologically. And I said, oh, and is everybody okay here on the sing-off? And he goes, oh yeah, you guys have the secret sauce. I mean, here's the thing. You're all in ensembles together, and there's something about the way you sing vocal harmony and you all connect with each other that you're all very grounded, right? Nobody has these delusions of grandeur. Nobody's like way off the map. So when a group loses, everybody's like, but we did a good job and we got to be on television, everything's fine, and they hug and they're connected and everything and they move forward and everybody's healthy and safe. He said, I haven't had to do anything backstage here for all of the episodes I've ever done, and I don't anticipate I will, but they still need to have me here for contractual reasons. I said, is that not the case? He goes, oh no, most people who walk off of a reality show having lost are a mess. Like they thought too much of themselves. They didn't have a clear sense of what was going on. They didn't have other people kind of keeping them in check and this reality testing that was going on. And I thought this was fascinating, but then I realized this is really the case when you have an ensemble like this. When you're spending your time with other people in a vocal harmony ensemble, you're constantly checking each other and lifting each other up when you need to be and deserve to be lifted up and bringing each other down a notch. Let me tell you, there's no ensemble more than an acapella group, particularly a college acapella group, that'll happily take you down a peg if you're getting a little too big for your britches. But this is really a very valuable skill to have friends who will tell you what you need to know, not what you want to know, but what you need to know. And there are times when we need to be lifted up, and there are times when we need to be brought back into reality. And this ongoing assessment and refinement of how we fit in and where we should be both helps us know our role in this world, but also how we fit into this larger piece. Alrighty. So in conclusion, I want to let you all know that my life's work is to spread harmony through harmony. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the experience that one has when they're singing in a harmony ensemble is one that will help create more harmony overall. We clearly live in very divided, divisive times. And the problem isn't necessarily that we fundamentally disagree on things, right? People on the left or people on the right have different ideas, different ideologies, different information bases also on what will make the world a better place. This is normal. This is the way humans have existed throughout time. It's not that we disagree, it's that we are taking this disagreement and making it more powerful and more of a focus than the commonalities that we have. When you're in an ensemble, you're not always going to agree on what the t-shirt color should be or what your album should be called, which song should open the set, who should be singing the solo on this song. You're going to have constant disagreements, but you always know that more important than anything is what you're able to create together. There's a fundamental respect and love and connection that happens in a choir that you can't find in most other elements of society. And this is so true in school. Middle schoolers who have the foresight to join a choir end up having a built-in group of friends. They've got, you know, a social network, and people who sing in a choir, they stay in school longer, they get better grades by, you know, they excel at more different topics. They do better in math and in linguistics. Things are more connected to their emotions. They have fewer problems. Suicide rates go down. Like, there are all these things that people's lives are better when they sing in a harmony ensemble. And then for people who are older, who maybe it's empty nesters or whatnot, when you find a chorus, maybe you find the local barbershop chorus or a community choir, you sing in your church ensemble, the style of music doesn't matter. You have that built-in group of friends. You have the support network. There are always people there for you. And I can tell you, in my world, there's this longing that's been happening because we haven't been able to be together to raise our voices. Zoom choirs are fundamentally frustrating. They're better than nothing, but you can't sing live over the internet because of the drag and the speed of light. And I'm sure you know all about these lag issues being scientists. But we can't wait to get back together again, and we will soon with these vaccines, and we'll move past this whole period of COVID and get together again and start singing harmony. And these harmony ensembles show the power of diversity and show communities, not just the people within them, but overall, how important it is that we have each other, how important it is that we respect the differences and that we celebrate these differences, but that we remember fundamentally that we need each other. That's the message that America needs. That's the message that the world needs right now. The respect for other people. And it's through harmony, vocal harmony, that I think that we can unlock much more interpersonal and social harmony. Anyway, that's my soapbox. That's my message. That's why I spend all the time doing what I'm doing. And before we get into questions, let me let all of you know a couple things. Number one, I'm easy to find on social media. And the reason I mention that is not like follow me on social media, but if you want to join an ensemble, or you want to find something for your child or your parent or your spouse or yourself to do that involves vocal harmony, I'm here, I'm free, I'm easy. This is what I do. I'm trying to get more people singing. So you can find me on the internet, Deke@DekeSharon.com, or go to my website, DekeSharon.com, or find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all that, Deke Sharon. I'm the only person with that name, so I'm easy to find. And I literally will help you find a group in your area. Doesn't matter where you are. If you're in the Bay Area, if you're spread somewhere around the world, if you're watching this now or 10 years from now, this is what I'm doing with my life. And I want to help you have the power of harmony in your life as well. So anyway, that's why I do what I'm doing, and I want to share it with you as well. And Colin, I'm going to hand it back to you so we can start doing some Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Deke. Great talk. For sure. I have some related questions to that last statement. So do you have any advice on how to start an a cappella group here at the lab?
Yes. And in fact, I've helped groups that sing in Google and Facebook, and there's this whole Acapella network that exists in the Bay Area. So, and they have annual concerts up in Walnut Creek, and like 2 nights, and it's a whole big event. What I recommend you do is gather a list of a bunch of people who are interested. Maybe you can find a core ensemble, like somebody who'd be interested in handling the logistics, and somebody else who'd be a good music director and whatever. Start it out casually, maybe once a week, once people start getting together, or you can even do it remotely, and then you'll see that it just starts to build. And people don't realize a generation or two ago, there were company choirs in most big companies, and there were like company songs. It was really a constant part of American culture. There were singing groups everywhere. So I'm fully in support of this, and in fact, I would be very happy to donate many free arrangements to help you get started. I've done over 2,000. I stopped counting at 2,000. So if you need arrangements, I'm happy to give them to you. You want, simple songs, complex songs, you want lots of parts, you want few parts, you want modern things, you want old things, whatever it is, I will help you do that, not only here, but also if people want to start groups in their community, or someone's got a kid and they want to start a group at their school, I'm there, and I got free arrangements for you.
That's awesome, Deke. So sort of a couple related questions to that. So what's your favorite a cappella arrangement or piece that you've done?
Ooh, it's an impossible question for me to answer, and it changes every single day. Some of my favorite stuff most recently with Acapella has been some of the stuff I did for the Incredibles 2 soundtrack. So they did the Glory Days, the big theme song for the Incredibles with just their voices. And yeah, a lot of stuff I've done for Acapella. You can search for it on YouTube or in Spotify, and they play some of it on Disney music channels and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. But it's tough to say. I love making it, but one of the most important things for me is not just how much I enjoyed it, but how many people have enjoyed doing it. Oh, and I recently did an arrangement for Straight No Chaser for their latest Christmas album, their latest holiday album. And the song was A Long December, which is a song by the Counting Crows. It wasn't really a holiday tune, but we kind of reimagined it, and I put holiday carols between each line, and it ends up with this really poignant message about like how I hope next year will be better than the last and whatnot. So that ended up being a really like powerful, bittersweet carol, really, for the 2020 holiday season, which wasn't our best holiday season.
Another question, it's more, I guess, personal in nature. How'd you go from having these dreams to making them a reality? I know you spoke a little bit about, when you left college, what you sort of stated as what your mission statement was, but yeah, can you talk a little bit more about how you actually brought them to fruition?
Yeah, there are a lot of specifics that we'll talk through, but I think the first thing to know is that when you're going to create something, you just have to do it. So growing up here in San Francisco, I went to elementary school and then freshman year of high school with Just Sherman, a good friend of mine who was German. And in fact, his dad ran the Goethe Institute here in San Francisco. And so after like 7, 8, 9 years, he ended up going back to Germany and whatnot. And he wrote a musical when he was in college, but then he ended up becoming a consultant. And he asked me, so how did you make a career of music? Because like here in Germany, everybody's like, you have a track and you study something and then you need to go into it and it's all very stratified. And I said, the way you start a band is you start a band. You get some people together and you're like, okay, let's make music. And then you try to find a place to perform. The way you start a nonprofit organization is you go online, you find out how to file the paperwork. Or back when I did, when I was in college, I got a NOLO press, with tear out sheets in the back and mailed it in to like California State Department and got the nonprofit paper. It's like, you just do it. You start by putting one foot in front of the next and you just keep moving. The thing that's actually most important, I think, is a measure of self-determination and also having some people that you can rely on to kind of reality test you. Or if you can create something with others as opposed to just yourself, that's one of the best things in the world, be it starting a new group or a new project or whatever, because then it's not entirely on your own shoulders. But I think the entrepreneurial spirit is so strong in America because so many people are just like, I'm just going to do it, right? It's time to dig a hole. I'm going to go get a shovel, and then I'm going to do a little research on how to dig holes, and then I'm going to put on some gloves and get my like dirty jeans on, and I'm just going to start digging. And that's really how it works. And when I wanted to start a March Madness for Acapella, I realized like I need to create a competition, and it's the competition that's in the movie Pitch Perfect. I started and with a cohort, and it was like, okay, well, let's call college groups and tell them we're going to start this competition and let's find a place to rent. And once you have the big goal, the decision tree of like little things that you need to do starts to magnify itself hugely. But then you're like, okay, well, now I know what I need to do these things. Here's this little one, check. Here's this little one. And, pyramids are built brick by brick. It's kind of like that.
That's awesome. I don't know if we'll have enough time to get through all these questions, but I do have something that I've seen you do in past talks. So I'm going to put you on the spot here, Deke.
Okay.
Give them a little taste of sort of your abilities. Would you be willing to give us a muted trumpet demonstration of how you can do this with your voice?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I have a YouTube channel where I teach a whole bunch of different musical instruments. But all right, so a regular trumpet sounds kind of like this. And then you can take that and turn it into a trombone. You get the little like vibrato with the slide. And you put a little harmon mute in the end of your trumpet. You get a little plunger on the end. And there's some videos of me doing this, like singing Summertime with my old group, the House Jacks, you can find online. And then there's flute. And there's harmonica. And there's electric guitar. And so many different sounds. The fact of the matter is, people don't realize that the human voice, second maybe only to a powerful synthesizer, is capable of creating more different sounds and tones and timbres than any instrument is, except through most of human history, people have just stood in the front and sung the lyrics, and then we create all these instruments to make the different sounds. So it's one of the most exciting things that's been happening in the past 30 years of contemporary a cappella is people have really been exploring what the human voice can do, right? We're kind of like parrots. We can mimic all kinds of stuff. We just need to like start playing around and figuring out how to do it. So like I said, I have a whole YouTube channel /Deke Sharon and a series called Too Many Notes with all different little talks about different kinds of a cappella, but there's sing like a trumpet and sing like a flute and sing like an electric guitar, blah, blah, blah in there if you want me to break it down and show you how to do it. And then, boy, will you be able to annoy your friends and neighbors.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you for attending our talk. Thank you for being able to speak here at the laboratory. A big shout out to Dustin Riggs, the LLESA author crew as well for bringing Deke out. I think hopefully you've inspired a lot of our attendees to sing, to try to sing if they haven't before in a group. Maybe we'll be able to form our LLNL acapella group here after a result of this call. I hope so. And I just want to do a shameless plug. We are having Labs Got Talent next week. It's going to start. So some of your peers and coworkers have sent in some amazing things that they've been able to do that they want to showcase and share with the rest of the laboratory. So check that out. We'll be posting something in Newsline about it. Again, this has been recorded. I definitely am going to reach back out to Deke and see if he has anything that we can do to get a group going on here. So if you are interested, feel free to email me. But thank you again, Deke. Thank
My
you for
pleasure.
being here. Great talk.
My pleasure. And you know, you can take all kinds of pop tunes too and change the lyrics to be about particle accelerators and all. You know, you can go deep if you want to go deep and nerdy. Like, I'm right there with you. I'm happy to help out. So let's do this.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Beautiful.